All right, well, can we just first just start off by could you tell me when did you serve?
So my original service was 1997, active duty Marine Corps, through 2001, and then over to the IRR from 2001 to 2005. And then I rejoined the Army, moving into USASOC in, I want to get the date correct, but it's very early spring of 2011, I believe. Like,
Okay.
I think I signed up in 2010, but it takes a while to get everything processed.
What made you want to go to the military?
Oh wow. The first time or the second time? Sorry, they're
First
very
time
distinct
in
points in my life.
1997.
Yeah.
What
Yeah.
made you want to go?
I had graduated high school and I wanted a challenge. I wanted to I I was a late bloomer. I was skinny and but I had a lot of determination and I just wanted to prove myself. And I was going to join the Air Force. And when I went in to go see the recruiters, I ended up seeing the Marine Corps recruiter and spent 5 minutes alone with him, which is probably the worst thing you can let your 18-year-old son do. And came out, set on going into the Marine Corps and trying to prove. Um, that I could meet all of the challenges that could be put before me. And I thought that would make me a better person. And I wanted to serve my country. Obviously, that's one of those things that people want to do. But I think in particular, I wanted to challenge myself.
Okay, so like this is 1997, and you said you the first time you did it for 4 years. Your first.
That my first four active, and then they did the four in the IRR. So
Okay, so that rolled right into 9/11. Were you involved in any way in?
in 9/11, no,
Yeah.
I was not. Um, I had gotten out about 6 months, 5 months prior to that.
Okay.
And I remember that I went over immediately. So I was in San Diego, and after this happened, I went immediately. I'm still in the IRR, right? So I went immediately over to um, MCRD San Diego, right into the recruiter's office, and said, "Hey, how do I go right back to active duty?" And he said, "Don't. We don't know what's going to happen here. We
Mm.
don't know, and you're going to get stuck in an MOS." I hated my MOS, my first MOS. And he said, "You're going to get stuck in that, and that's what you're going to do." And he said, "You just give it a minute and see what happens, see what the needs are. Didn't you want to go to college? Isn't that what you were doing?" And I was. So I um, sort of took a step back.
Hmm.
And as the war on terror kind of drew on and on, I'd started a civilian life. I had gone to college. I was doing like small business consulting, and I was sitting with my brother. I don't know if you're asking this question. I'm going to tell you anyway. Sorry.
Go ahead.
I
Go
was sitting with my brother, and we
ahead.
we were watching. You remember George Stephanopoulos used to have that Sunday show, and
Hmm.
and he would list all of the KIA for the week
Hmm.
and the an honorarium. And I don't know what it was, but one day I was just sitting there watching it, and I I was looking at the ages, and I'm thinking, I'm single, I'm in, I'm very fit. Well, I thought I was very fit. I was very fit. I thought, oh, how can I? And this says is very self-serving, so I don't want to make it sound like it's something that I did to be. I just thought I could either A, help with my experience, and maybe help prevent a death, or on the flip side, and this again very self-aggrandizing, but I thought maybe at worst I could replace one of these, either one of these kids who've never lived a life, or these people who have wives and kids back home.
Hmm.
And I know that's very morbid to think, but I just, in the end outcome, I think everybody who joins understands what the true sacrifice is, right? And what it means when you say, "Hey, I'm willing to do this." So I just made a decision one day. Hey, I'm going to go back in, and I went back to the Marine Corps, and I had made a decision that I wanted to do a very particular job, which is called civil affairs, which in the Army is attached to psychological operations, but the civil affairs job was so interesting to me in that The tenets of civil affairs are all based on mitigating human suffering and kinetic activity in support of the battle space commander, and that's the idea of creating simple solutions for complex problems and actually having a direct impact on people and helping people while at the same time accomplishing the larger goals that we have as a nation. I just it sounded so fascinating, and they're at the tip of the spear, so you're not hiding out somewhere all the time, and it was just all very but the Marine Corps had a very small unit. I jokingly tell people that what had happened was I'd gone to college, and when the Marine Corps found out I learned how to read, they told me I had to go to the Army. But it was more of, as I looked at it, it wasn't that I was afraid of the competition for the job. It was that the smaller the force told me that it was the smaller the footprint of the mission. So when you looked across the sectors, the Army was doing amazing things in civil affairs. They had dedicated a lot of resources to this, and not just in nation building, but integrating them into all the uh, mission spheres across the globe, right? And utilizing and the best resources they had available across all fields. So seeing the best veterinarians, the best doctors, the best MPs, everybody starting to laterally move over to civil affairs or being pulled into civil affairs missions. Um, and when you looked at that, and I had the opportunity to meet with Colonel Haberlack out of the 418th, no, excuse me, the 425th Civil Affairs Battalion out of Los Angeles. And I was sold immediately. And I happened to go in at a time that by the time I went to do the courses and everything, I was immediately mobilizing to go to Afghanistan and apply those lessons. And of course, you learn everything you thought you knew was wrong. And but you know, civil affairs is such a just I don't know if you've done many profiles or on anybody from civil affairs, but the mission set is just to me fascinating, and the type of people, the subset of people that you bring in and that make up your small teams, and the way they complement each other, the way missions are conducted. Especially as I move into this, as I've moved into the civilian world, I found that so few people, when they try to create solutions, that they're not willing to look at. You're not trying to reinvent the wheel all the time, but you might want to look at how that wheel was made or how it's being used. And I think so few people are willing to innovate and think in terms of uh, how can I better use my resources that are at my disposal? How can I localize my supply chains? How can I streamline these things? And that was one of those things that in civil affairs you're sort of required to do for all of your missions. And then on top of that, whenever you create whenever there's a problem, you're expected, and you create a solution, excuse me, you're expected to have what we call a measure of effectiveness, which is the MOE, which is the tangible metric that proves that your solution worked. And then you have to just game through everything, your first, second, and third order effects, your unintended consequences, your intended consequences, your known knowns, unknown knowns, your unknown unknowns, which God forbid exist. And just going through that whole process, and then constantly, like, everything you do at a micro or macro level, and it's interwoven into the mission subsets that the battle space commander has prioritized, and the end outcomes that are desired. um you get to work with multinational partners, NGOs, GOs, civilians, sister services, things of that nature. And it was just one of those things you never really realize just how much of at a nexus point you are, and you're kind of in a Swiss watch, and it was just I loved it so much. Sorry, I kind of went off on a tangent
It's
there, but
all good
that's
because
yeah,
it almost seems like, is this how you get into beef?
that is exactly what happened. I got out of the military and I ran for Congress right away when I retired. So I was medically retired, and I was running for Congress at the same time while I was on terminal leave, which is a real daring thing to do if you think about it, right? So just raising your fist against your sitting congressman who could probably immediately call you back to active or something. But yeah, no, but I did it. The primary reason I did it was, one, I felt that I wanted to tell the public that, this who I am. I'm back in my community, and I'm here to serve. But the other reason is it gives you access to a lot of people who will speak bluntly with you about what's going on locally. Like, what do we need? You know what I
Mhm.
mean? And when I left, I knew I wanted to that I would start a business, and I was partnering with. I call him. He's my brother, but brother from another mother. A guy who
Mhm.
I served with. We retired. He retired out of the Pentagon. He was the liaison between the budget office and the Senate. So he really understood. And I said, we wanted to start a business together, but when we looked at it, we kind of did it upside down. We didn't say, "Hey, what's everybody buying?" or "What's it?" We said, "What problem can we solve?"
Mhm.
And then what can we look at our resources? And so it came down to agrarian, and then freeze drying was just this step where we said, there's this, um, food prices move up and down. You're aware of that.
Mhm.
But when supply is at its highest, we pay farmers not to grow crops. Because it can wreck the industry if the price gets too if the supply is so high, then and we just don't have an outlet for it, it's going to drive the prices down, which is going to have a ripple effect, which is the other bottom, right? Where you have prices that are extremely high, something you have right now. And we thought, is there a way you can, and across all food, but especially animal proteins, is there a way that you could cut 5, 10, 15, 20% off of each of those levels, right?
Mhm.
How would you do that? And as we started analyzing that problem, we came up with long-term storage. We started thinking about how we do humanitarian aid, how we export, all of those things. And so then that naturally led us to long-term storage, which was we investigated modern freeze drying technology at the commercial level, what's available, and of course you have to do all of this with zero money, right? Because
Mhm.
they don't hand you a big fat check when you retire. So all of these things were problems that just needed solutions, and we just sort of had to put that puzzle together. And how we came to beef was at one, clean prime beef is just the best animal protein you can get,
Mhm.
and secondly, nobody really does beef. They do beef crumbles or like taco flavored beef porridge, or something like that. And
Mhm.
I got to say, I've having had 1,500 cows run through the chute, and I'm very intimate with our processing plant, so I'm there a lot. But I've never seen a beef crumble on a cow anywhere before. So
Right.
so we wanted to say, hey, why is nobody um because the idea is right is there's this whole prepper mentality, right? This preppers, like this some angry guy in his basement with cans of food and like one book, and he's going to live out the apocalypse. But that's not really what it is. It's what our grandparents and great grandparents did. They just had six
Mhm.
months worth of food, and most people just don't have the ability to have 6 months worth of beef or protein, animal protein, to supplement their gardens. A lot of people are very self-sufficient, or at least working towards that. They learned a lot during COVID, right?
Mhm.
And what we wanted to do is be able to say that, hey, you can have this quality of product available to you. And so that was a problem. So, right, again, we just want to solve problems. So that we thought that was going to be the biggest deal. We thought that nobody's doing this, so there must be something wrong. And we just realized that it was just hard work.
Mhm.
You had to be willing to work hard and create efficient efficient systems, but wasn't impossible. It was just really hard, and it was worth it. And then we wanted to be all Americans. I mean, I think we're our oxygen absorbers come from Wisconsin. We don't buy anything from any foreign country. All of our beef is locally sourced. It's quite literally processed. Down the street from our facility, and we stovepiped our supply chain so that we could guarantee. I mean, our Mylar bags come from Orlando, and Mylar's made in Orlando, but all of these things that from a civil affairs perspective, I would look at and shake and nod my head and say, okay, we did what we were supposed to do. And our measure of effectiveness was, are we able to provide a product that meets the standards that people expect and want? And we did that. In my opinion, we far exceeded those expectations. And we're real proud of that. But again, it was just applying those things that I those same things that I applied for 12 years in civil affairs.
Mhm. Where do you guys? What is the ultimate goal with? I guess I want to say, what's the ultimate goal that you guys have with beef?
Um, world dominance.
Okay.
No, I'm just kidding.
Mm-hmm.
That no, it isn't so it isn't just beef. We actually in a month we'll have bison.
Okay.
We had to go up it took months because we have very high standards, and I'm down to my final three herds, but we've purchased bison futures. Meaning we've locked in the prices and we have
Mm-hmm.
them being grazed the way we want them grazed, but um we're bringing bison in. We are about to bring in eggs. We're still about a year away from being able to go back to providing the type of chicken that we want to be able to provide. So I think you see the trend here is that we're expanding into other animals, animal proteins,
Mm-hmm.
and the reason for this is that I genuinely believe this is a um, freeze drying technology has leapt huge leaps and bounds, right? The industry itself is going to grow four times its size in the next decade.
Mm-hmm.
It's for many reasons, but a lot of which include, you know, you and I could go to Africa and with some life straws or some reverse osmosis machines could get clean water, couldn't we?
Mm-hmm.
Right. Uh, but can I ship a cow to Africa? And I'm using Africa just as an example because it's landlocked and it's in this, and we're talking about
Possibly
like
though,
a
you could ship a cow,
sure,
but
sure, right, but you got to keep it alive, and you got to,
right.
but what's the end goal? The end goal is to provide people protein. We could say the same thing with anywhere that you ship food, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
We most people don't live in Hawaii, but everybody jokes about Hawaii eats a lot of spam. There's a reason why they eat spam, right? Because it's shelf stable for a good enough time that they can have access to it because they're out in the middle of nowhere, right? And they can't obviously maintain a livestock that they would need. So when you think about the ability to cut three-quarters of the weight and add a 10 to 25-year shelf life and make it shelf stable, and all you need is water to rehydrate the product and make it available to supplement, to add to any recipe, to salt and just eat whatever. The point is, when you think about cost and transit and everything of that, it just changes the game.
That's game changing.
It is absolutely. It's a paradigm shift. And we didn't just want to, I mean, because again, the freeze dried industry is there. Is we wanted to prove that you could do it with high quality food.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what the real game changer in our eyes is. And I won't even talk about what we my vision on what we could do with even vegetables. But the point is that I believe that there are ways to, and our product is sous vide and pasteurized, and so it's already, there's no preservatives. The only ingredient in it in our product is beef, and as when you see the bison, the only ingredient will be bison. And same thing with eggs and chicken and whatever we provide, because there are ways to do this, but the the emphasis is here is that you're sending out a clean, healthy product to a place, and I think that's the paradigm shift, because anybody can take a cow from the government auction, surplus auction, and
Mm-hmm.
find out where those beef crumbles come from. I'm sure, but
Mm-hmm.
that's we don't like the word survive. I like the word Sur Thrive. I think that
Mm-hmm.
this idea of living in this quasi, like, I'm gonna eat my oatmeal and cheesy rice that I got from Costco, and I'm gonna survive. Is that really why? We're in a first world nation. You should be any instance of issues are going to be resolved within 30 days, but you're not going to have the food. So, but why would you want to sit here and eat junk? Why would you do it? But what if it is longer? Why would you want to eat junk? But especially, why do we want to send junk around the world when we can send the best we have? And we can do it in a way that actually assists these industries in helping stabilize. these prices. And that, by the way, goes across all sectors because whatever the cattle industry does affects the feed industry, which obviously means that you're affecting your grain industries, which impacts your rice markets, which impacts, and it's just a ripple effect. It's like a butterfly effect. And with the breadbasket in Ukraine under siege right now, with India declaring that they're not going to their rice exports are going to be drastically lowered this year due to the price of fuel. Um, so there's a lot that impacts the global supply chain, and we don't even and our job, obviously, in civil affairs, and my job now is to see that ripple before it gets there, right?
Mhm.
And that's
Mhm.
why we need to have access to bison because the price of feed, this fire in Texas, this I mean, we're at a 71-year low on cattle right now. That there reaches a point
That
where
was prior to the fire. We
that
were
was prior to
already.
the fire, right?
Wow.
And the direct impact on that fire, 10,000 head is huge, but it's not world changing, right?
Mhm.
But it's the grazing land. It's the wells that were melted. It's the yeah, I mean, this people have no idea what that means. And so they may have moved all the cattle over to it's the uh, uh, shrinkage in the yard. So
Mm.
what about during all the times when they couldn't go and open those mass processors that are up there? And I'm not even talking about the local processors, but the mass processors. When those cattle sit in those yards, they lose 2% body mass per day. I mean, and they're not fattened up, hopefully not, but ours aren't. But, when you talk about cattle, I'm just talking about that's just losing beef. It's just shrinking away. So again, these effects won't necessarily be seen tomorrow. They're going to be seen in 3 months. They'll be seen in 6 months. And it's the same for everything. So anything that I think we can do to stabilize the global supply chain, you need to start locally because strong pillars make for a strong foundation, right?
Mhm.
And so you build these strong cornerstones, and you sit here and I use the wrong word, pillars, cornerstones. But you build these cornerstones locally, and I think that allows us to build a very strong foundation. The United States has always been innovative. We've always been an exporter of not only great ideas, but of excellent products. And I think we have the opportunity to have an outsized impact on global health through clean food, especially clean animal proteins. That over the next 10 years, you'll see these innovations take place, and I hope that will drive this paradigm shift. And again, those are big dreams, I guess, in a way. But in civil affairs, we were never taught to think small. You were taught to act small and make
Mhm.
and big impacts.
My question, I'm not understanding how your products aren't in every facet of every person of human life right now, because it seems like it's exactly the way that globally everybody would want to go when it comes to consuming food. So what is the challenge that you have right now to make sure everybody has your product?
I think it's about education and, obviously, so as we scale up and as we are able to control more of our supply chain, um, the always goal is to get the prices in line so that the average consumer can look at it as a day-to-day item.
Mhm.
That takes time. That's the hard part about being at the tip of the spear, right? So you're the one that's taking the brunt of sitting here and trying to streamline all of these facets of that supply chain. As far as the mentality to match up with that, so to see the value proposition in that, then you have to have people shift. You got to remember that as a first world nation, I mean, I would say especially over the last 20 years, people became very used to the idea of snapping their fingers and getting what they wanted. I call it the Amazon effect. The problem with the Amazon effect is that people don't see they lose sight completely of not just the supply chain but the distribution chain, right? And this idea that I can get anything I need tomorrow only works as long as those supply chains and those
Everything stays intact.
distribution chain.
Yeah.
Correct, correct.
Mhm.
So when we saw that disruption during COVID, And now people are seeing it sort of opened people's eyes a little. First, they just open them. Then once they opened them, I think people started looking around and noticing other things like, oh, wait, where does my stuff come from? Right.
Mm-hmm.
Because, and then when they start asking, where does my stuff come from? Then the idea of, like we talked about, the butterfly effect, I think people start to see that. Now, it's like leading a horse to water because, in a way, you just want to show people, right? You just want to
Mm-hmm.
show them. I'm not trying to make you drink. I just want to show you the 100,000 foot view, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
And it's very hard to get the average consumer who's gotten used to microtransactions to look at the macro view of global supply chain and the precarious
Well put.
nature in which it sits, right?
Mhm.
And again, having people connect the idea of, and this is not political, but like for example, an environmental policy put in place on the exploration of future oils that impacts obviously the value of existing deposits, right? Which raises the cost of everything, which means that India can't ship rice this year. You see what I'm saying? Well,
Mm-hmm.
and people can't have rice, which is the staple of like 80% of the world's population. What are they going to supplement it with? Well, they're going to supplement it with grains, right? But Ukraine doesn't have any grains. So what grains are they going to move to? Well, they're going to move to grains that might be used for feed because people are going to start dumping their surplus because the value cost is going to go up and they're going to say, whoa, I got to sell now. Um, People don't see those things. You know what I mean? But I think that now people are becoming more aware of, even if they don't understand what it means, they understand that the kinetic activity itself is going to have an impact on things.
Um, I just have like a couple of more questions.
Oh, please.
Oh, the your military service, being able to get out, become a civilian, start your own business. And you see a lot of veterans get out and they do not go that route. It might be a route that's a complete 180 from where you are. How do you try, or what would be your advice to veterans who are getting out of the military, want to start their own business? What what would you just advise them?
I think that one of the things that's most undervalued about veterans, I hear a lot of people who go the employment route. They talk to employers, value their hard work ethic, their honesty, integrity, their so forth and so on. I think ingenuity is overlooked.
Hmm.
And I think that because ingenuity is overlooked, and it doesn't ingenuity does not always mean a massive world paradigm shift, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I think that military members who retire in good standing, they carry with them the ability to adapt and overcome that is inherent, and they don't even sometimes realize just how valuable that skill is. Um, Perseverance is great, but what I'm talking about is creating novel solutions that most people would throw money at, most people would throw in the towel. Veterans look at those problems and they say, I can fix that. I mean, every veteran who's been downrange knows what duct tape can do, right? So with that, or 550 cord, right? And so with that being the case, I think it's how you apply that in life. And if you want to own a business, if you want to be self-employed, and it doesn't matter if you want to own a car detailing business or if you want to start a telecommunications company, there is there are not a lot of resources that are going to be, there's no special loans available to us. We don't have the credit history to be able to take out the loans required. When you talk about pulling yourself, if I walked you through how little we had to start this company and where we are now in just 2 years, we went from investing, we all had about $3,000 each.
Hmm.
and now we're on track to do $8 million in sales this year.
Ooh.
And when you think that what it meant, what the types of sacrifices we have to make, and the ingenuity we were forced to apply, do I believe that any veteran can do that? Yes, yes, I do. I actually genuinely believe that. Do I believe that it's scaled? Obviously, yes, of course. And I believe people should follow their passions. But, we're used to paperwork, we're used to bureaucracy. So all of those things are just normal hurdles for us, right?
Mhm.
We are used to going to, there are great small business administrations that will help you. There are ways to get registered as veteran-owned businesses that they can walk you through, and these are small amounts of money that you can walk through. But when it comes to applying yourself and finding where you see a gap in the market, where you see that other innovators have not stepped forward, then that is your chance to shine. And it's inherent in you. And although other people undervalue it, you should never undervalue it yourself. Never undervalue yourself. Never undervalue your ability to create a solution that others have not been willing to create or been unable to create because they've never been forced to.
Mhm.